I had just hung my retirement plaque on the wall, 38 years of teaching advanced literature at Kennedy High, when my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. I almost didn't answer, but worry for my son Michael won out. I should have let it ring. "Judith," she began without even a hello, "I'm dropping the kids off at your place tomorrow morning. I need you to watch them for 2 weeks." I nearly dropped my cup of chamomile tea. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't act surprised," Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with that condescension I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "Now that you're retired, it's not like you're doing anything important with your time. You can finally be useful." The travel brochures for the New England literary tour I'd been dreaming about for decades lay scattered on my coffee table, my first indulgence after a lifetime of putting others first. My husband James had passed away 8 years ago, and I'd spent those years alone, saving every penny while continuing to teach. "Vanessa, I have plans," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Plans?" She laughed that shrill laugh I'd come to dread. What plans could a retired old teacher possibly have? Knitting? Watching soap operas? "Don't be ridiculous, Judith." I closed my eyes, picturing my son, working 12-hour shifts at the engineering firm to afford the lifestyle Vanessa demanded. A lifestyle that included her supposed marketing conferences that seemed to happen monthly, each requiring expensive new clothes and jewelry. "The children can't miss 2 weeks of school," I said reasonably. "That's why I'm bringing them to you," she snapped. "The conference is in Boston, a huge opportunity. This could finally be my big break." Her big break in multi-level marketing had been coming for 7 years now, each scheme costing my son more money than the last. "Is Michael aware of this arrangement?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Michael works all day. He doesn't have time to worry about childcare details." Translation: she hadn't told him. "Besides, they're your grandchildren. It's your obligation to help." "I'm not sure." "Listen." Her voice turned threatening. "If you want to see your grandchildren at all, you'll cooperate. Remember who controls access to them." That final threat ignited something inside me. For years, Vanessa had been systematically cutting me out of my grandchildren's lives. Their visits became increasingly rare, their phone calls monitored. The last time I'd seen them was at Peter's 7th birthday, and even then, just for an hour before Vanessa whisked them away to her parents' house, the important grandparents with the large house and swimming pool. "Fine," I said, feigning resignation. "What time will you bring them?" 7 in the morning. "And don't fill them with junk food like last time, and no undermining my parenting with your outdated ideas." The last time she referred to was Christmas, 6 months ago, when I dared to bake cookies with the children. According to Vanessa, sugar was poison, unless it was in the expensive cupcakes she bought from the boutique bakery for her Instagram photos. After she hung up, I sat in my living room, staring at my retirement plaque. 38 years of shaping young minds, guiding generations of students through Shakespeare, Austen, and Morrison. I'd been named Teacher of the Year 3 times, and now, according to my daughter-in-law, I was nothing but free childcare. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I dreaded seeing my grandchildren. I loved them desperately, but because I knew what Vanessa had done to them, how she'd poisoned them against me and their father. In the rare moments I'd spent with them recently, I barely recognized the sweet children they once were. Lucas, once curious and kind, now 13 and glued to his phone, radiating disdain. Julia, my bright 10-year-old bookworm, now dismissive and distant. Even little Peter, at 7, had begun mimicking his mother's cold attitude. As I lay awake, an idea began to form. I'd spent my career observing children, understanding their behaviors, recognizing when something wasn't right at home. I'd made dozens of calls to Child Protective Services over the years when I noticed the signs. I knew how to document concerns, build a case, protect the vulnerable. Perhaps this wasn't just an inconvenience. Perhaps this was an opportunity. At 6:45 the next morning, I was ready. I'd converted my spare bedroom into a space for the children, with 3 comfortable beds and fresh linens. I'd stocked the refrigerator with healthy foods I knew they used to enjoy before Vanessa's latest dietary restrictions. I'd pulled out board games and books appropriate for each child's age. Most importantly, I'd made a phone call to my old friend, Mariana Collins, who had retired from family law last year. "It's been a while, Judith," she'd said when she picked up. "What can I do for you?" "Do you still have those small recording devices you used during your divorce cases?" I asked. "And does your sister Sandra still work for Child Protective Services?" At 7:15, Vanessa's luxury SUV pulled into my driveway. The vehicle cost more than my annual teacher's salary, purchased on my son's credit without his knowledge. A fact I'd discovered during a rare moment of openness when Michael visited alone last Father's Day. She didn't even turn off the engine. The children tumbled out, dragging oversized backpacks. Lucas, tall and lanky with his father's brown hair, didn't look up from his phone. Julia, with her long blonde hair falling over her face, stared at her shoes. Only Peter glanced at my house, his little face a mixture of wariness and curiosity. Vanessa lowered her window just enough to speak. "They've had breakfast, but no lunch or dinner. That's on you." She checked her lipstick in the rearview mirror. "Lucas is allergic to dust. Julia won't eat anything green. Peter needs his tablet to sleep." "Does Michael know they're here?" I asked, noting how unhappy the children looked. "Michael is working, as usual. Someone has to support this family." She looked me up and down dismissively. "Not everyone is lucky enough to retire with a government pension. My pension, $3,800 a month after 38 years of service. Vanessa spent more than that on eyelash extensions and nail appointments." The children shuffled past me into the house, Lucas with his phone glued to his face, Julia with a permanent expression of disdain, and Peter already scanning for the television. "Behave for Grandma," Vanessa said without conviction. Then she leaned toward me and whispered, "And don't you dare fill their heads with your outdated ideas. Remember who decides if you see them again." She drove away without saying goodbye to her children. No hug, no kiss, just the sound of her expensive car speeding down the street. I stood there with 3 children who looked at me like I was a stranger, and in many ways, I was. Vanessa had built a wall between us over the years with unkind comments about me, limited visits, and dismissing the gifts I carefully chose. "Grandma, where's the Wi-Fi?" Lucas broke the silence. "I need the Wi-Fi now. The router is having problems," I lied. I had actually turned it off deliberately. "What? No way." "Mom! Mom!" He started screaming as if he were being tortured. "Your mother has left, Lucas, and shouting won't bring the internet back. Ugh, you're the worst grandma ever. No wonder nobody likes you." There it was, Vanessa's poison coming out of my grandson's mouth. It didn't hurt me. I was prepared. "I'm hungry," interrupted Julia, "but I won't eat anything you make. Mom says you cook poorly, and that's why Dad is so skinny. And I want to watch cartoons," added Peter. At home, I watch cartoons all day. I looked at these 3 perfect products of neglect disguised as modern parenting. Children who knew no boundaries, who didn't understand respect, who had been programmed to despise me. I took a deep breath. I had 14 days ahead of me. 14 days to change the course of this story. And I had a plan. I decided to start my plan that very morning. After observing my grandchildren's behavior for an hour, Lucas screaming about the lack of internet, Julia complaining of hunger but refusing anything I offered, and Peter kicking furniture because there were no cartoon channels on my old television, I gathered the 3 of them in the living room. "I have some rules for your stay here," I announced calmly. "Rules? We don't follow rules," Lucas retorted with disdain. "Mom says rules are for people without creativity." I smiled patiently. "In my house, we have rules. First, everyone contributes. Second, privileges are earned, not given. Third, respect is mandatory." "What does that mean?" asked Julia, rolling her eyes. "It means that if you want Wi-Fi, television, or anything else, you'll have to earn those privileges." "This is ridiculous," shouted Lucas. "I'm calling Mom." "Feel free," I replied, handing him my landline phone. "Her number is in the address book." He furiously dialed. After several attempts, he hung up. "She's not answering." "Of course not," I said calmly, while discreetly placing a small recorder under the coffee table. "Your mother is very busy at her marketing conference." All 3 looked at me, confused. "Now, Lucas, you're going to help wash the breakfast dishes. Julia, you'll make the beds. Peter, you'll pick up the toys you scattered." "I'm not doing any of that," Lucas shouted, throwing the phone to the floor. I didn't react, just calmly took out my cell phone and snapped a photo of him. Interesting. I'm documenting everything to show your father when he comes to visit you. Dad's coming here? Peter's eyes lit up. Of course. Did you think I'd have 3 children with me for 2 weeks without their father knowing? This information seemed to disconcert them. For the first time, I saw a crack in the armor of hostility Vanessa had built. Now, you can choose. Either help with the assigned chores or spend the next 14 days without electronics, desserts, or outings. To my surprise, after a few minutes of tantrums, they began doing what I asked, sullen and complaining. But they did it. It was a start. That afternoon, while the 3 watched a cartoon I allowed as a reward for their morning work, I called my son. Michael, it's me, your mother. Mom, is everything okay? Did something happen? Yes, I have your children at my house. A long silence followed. What do you mean? Vanessa left them here this morning. She said she was going to a conference in Boston for 2 weeks and that you knew about it. Another silence. I didn't know anything about this. She told me she was visiting her mother and taking the kids. Just as I suspected. Well, they're with me now, but I think you should come by to see them. There are things we need to discuss. I'm leaving work right now. An hour later, Michael arrived. When the children saw him, something extraordinary happened. All 3 ran to hug him, as if they hadn't seen him in weeks. In reality, they probably hadn't. My son worked from 6 in the morning until 7 at night, often including weekends. Dad, Grandma doesn't have internet, Lucas immediately complained. And she wants us to do chores, added Julia. And her TV is small and old, completed Peter. Michael looked at me confused. Mom, what's going on? Children, why don't you play in the garden while I talk to your father? Reluctantly, they obeyed. As soon as we were alone, I laid all my cards on the table. Michael, how long has it been since you spent an entire day with your children? He looked away, embarrassed. I work a lot, Mom. You know that. And when was the last time you checked what Vanessa has been doing with your money or where she travels every month? What are you talking about? I showed him Vanessa's Facebook page, which I had accessed through my computer. Photos of her at resorts, expensive restaurants, designer stores, all posted during times when she was supposedly working or taking care of the children. This must be old, he tried to justify. Look at the dates, Michael. And look at this. I showed him the frequent mentions of someone named Daniel, who appeared regularly in the comments, always with suspicious heart emojis. My son turned pale. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You're so busy working to support her lifestyle that you don't even notice your children are being raised without boundaries, without values, and worse, being poisoned against you and me. Poisoned? He seemed genuinely confused. Vanessa has systematically kept me away from the children for years. Do you know how many times I've seen my grandchildren in the last year? 6 times, Michael. 6 brief visits where I could barely hug them because, according to Vanessa, I spoiled them too much. And as for you, you're practically a stranger to your own children. Michael collapsed on the sofa, holding his head in his hands. My God, what have I done? The question isn't what you've done. It's what you're going to do now. I put my hand on his shoulder. These children need their father. Their real father. Not the ATM that pays the bills and then disappears. That night, Michael did something he hadn't done in years. He had dinner with his children. It was a tense meal at first. The children didn't know how to act with their father present, but soon they began to open up. Peter told about his new game. Julia mentioned she wanted to take ballet lessons, but Mommy says it's too expensive. Lucas admitted he had gotten poor grades on his last report card. Why didn't you tell me about this? Michael asked his oldest son. Lucas shrugged. You're never home. And Mom said you don't care about these things, only about work. I saw the pain in my son's eyes. Vanessa's lies ran so deep they had infiltrated the children's very perception of their father. After the grandchildren went to bed, I continued the conversation with Michael. Son, we need to document all of this. The emotional abandonment, the lies, the misappropriation of money. If Vanessa is indeed having an affair, as I suspect, you need to be prepared. Prepared for what? He asked, still dazed by all the revelations. To fight for custody of your children. The next day, Mariana appeared with the equipment she had promised, 3 discrete recorders and a small camera that looked like a smoke detector. We installed everything strategically around the house. Your daughter-in-law sounds like a nightmare, commented Mariana as we tested the equipment. You have no idea. I told her about how Vanessa had kept me away from the children, how she manipulated my son, how she used his money to support a luxurious lifestyle while he barely had time to see his own children. And the worst part, I continued, is what she's doing to these children. She's raising little monsters without empathy, without responsibility, who think the world owes them everything. Well, in 2 weeks, you won't be able to reverse years of damage, warned Mariana. But you can plant seeds. And that's exactly what I started to do. I established a clear routine: breakfast at 8 o'clock, followed by chores for each child, lunch at noon. In the afternoon, I allowed a few hours of electronics, but only after they finished their homework and helped with something around the house. Dinner at 7 o'clock, always with Michael present. The first few days were a constant battle. Lucas tried to run away twice. Julia refused to eat almost everything I prepared. Peter cried for hours because I wouldn't let him play on his tablet during dinner. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to see changes. On the morning of the 5th day, Lucas came down for breakfast without me having to call him 3 times. "Can I help set the table?" he asked, surprising everyone, including himself. On the 6th day, I found Julia looking at photos in my family album. "Who's this with Dad?" she asked, pointing to a picture where I was hugging a young Michael. "That's me when your father was about your age. You look happy." We were. We didn't have much money after your grandfather died, but we had each other. She was silent for a moment. "Mom says you didn't take good care of Dad. What do you think?" She shrugged, but I could see doubt in her eyes. The first crack in Vanessa's wall of lies. On the 7th day, something extraordinary happened. Peter had a nightmare and, instead of calling for his parents or crying alone, came to my room. "Grandma," he whispered, "can I sleep with you? I had a bad dream." I opened my arms and he snuggled against me. "Of course you can, my love." "Grandma," he murmured, half asleep, "why don't we visit you anymore? What does your mother say about that? That you're always busy, or your house is dangerous for children, or that you don't like us?" My heart tightened. "Peter, I have always wanted to see you. Always. Never believe that I don't love you." He fell asleep in my arms, and for the first time in years, I felt I was reclaiming my grandchildren, one by one. Meanwhile, Michael continued his investigation. With the help of a lawyer friend of Mariana's, he discovered that Vanessa had taken out 3 credit cards in his name, generating a debt of almost $30,000. He also found emails between her and this Daniel person, planning a trip to Europe, not to Boston. With each new discovery, I watched my son go through stages of denial, anger, and finally acceptance. He was being betrayed on every possible level, and his children were paying the price. On the 8th day, we received a visit from Mariana's sister, Sandra, from Child Protective Services. Officially, it was a routine visit to check on the children. Unofficially, it was to document the maternal abandonment and psychological manipulation to which the children had been subjected. "Children?" Sandra gently asked during the interview. "Do you miss your mother?" Lucas shrugged, feigning indifference. Julia looked at her own hands. It was Peter who answered with the brutal honesty of children. "Mommy is never home anyway. She's always traveling, or with her friends, or talking on the phone with Uncle Daniel." "Uncle Daniel?" Sandra raised her eyebrows, looking at me. "Mommy's friend," Peter explained innocently. "He sometimes sleeps at our house when Daddy is away on business trips." Lucas kicked his brother under the table, but it was too late. The secret had been revealed, and we had it all recorded. That night, after the children were asleep, Michael, Mariana, Sandra, and I gathered in the living room. What we have here is a clear case of parental alienation combined with emotional neglect, Sandra explained. These children have been conditioned to reject their father and grandmother, while their mother regularly abandons them to maintain an extramarital relationship. With the evidence we've gathered so far, you have a strong case for requesting full custody, added the lawyer, Dr. Mendez. The fraudulent credit cards, the emails, the children's testimony, all of this weighs heavily. Michael looked devastated and determined at the same time. "What do we do now?" "We continue documenting," I replied, "and we prepare the children for the storm that will come when Vanessa returns." Because I knew that when she came back and realized she had lost control of the situation, Vanessa would show her true face, and we needed to be ready. The 10th day began with an unexpected revelation. While preparing breakfast, I heard muffled crying coming from Julia's room. I found my granddaughter sitting on her bed, clutching a small wooden box. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting beside her. She tried to hide the box, but I had already seen it. "Nothing," she mumbled, quickly wiping away her tears. "Julia, you can trust me." After a few moments of hesitation, she opened the box. Inside were photos, little notes, and small gifts I had given her over the years. Things Vanessa had told me were lost or thrown away. "Mom said to throw your things in the trash," she confessed in a quiet voice. But I kept them hidden, my heart filled with emotion. "You saved all this?" Julia nodded. "I always wanted to visit you more, Grandma, but Mom said you didn't like us, that you were bitter and old-fashioned. And what do you think now?" She looked at me with eyes that reminded me so much of my son. "I think Mom lied about a lot of things." I hugged my granddaughter while she cried, releasing years of internal confusion and conflict. This moment represented a crucial turning point. If Julia, the most suspicious of the 3 children after Lucas, was beginning to see the truth, there was real hope for repair. Later that day, as Julia helped me bake cookies, an activity she had initially dismissed as old lady stuff, she asked a question that caught me by surprise. "Grandma, why does Mom hate you so much?" I thought carefully before answering. "Your mother doesn't hate me, Julia. She fears me." "Fears you? Why?" "Because I represent everything she avoids being. Someone who worked her whole life, built something with her own hands, raised a son with values. She wants everything quickly, easily, without effort. And when someone like me exists, it reminds her that she chose the wrong path. Is Mom a bad person?" The concern in her voice was palpable. "Your mother has made bad choices and is now so buried in her lies that she doesn't know how to get out. That doesn't justify the damage she's caused, but it might help explain it." Julia remained silent, absorbing my words as she shaped the cookie dough. Meanwhile, Lucas was going through his own transformation, albeit more resistant. Michael started taking him to work after school, showing him what really happened there: the long hours, the physical effort, the sacrifice. It was a shock for the teenager to realize that the money that financed his games and expensive clothes came from his father's daily sweat. "Dad," he asked during dinner, "why don't you tell Mom about the credit card debts?" Michael exchanged a glance with me before answering, "Because every time I try to talk about money with your mother, she changes the subject or says I'm being controlling." "But it's your money," insisted Lucas, with a surprising understanding for his 13 years. "Our money," Michael corrected. "It should be for our family, not for secret trips or expensive clothes." On the 12th day, I received a message from Vanessa. My heart raced when I saw her name on the screen, fearing that somehow she had discovered our plan. "Staying another week in Boston. Opportunities have arisen. Are the kids okay?" I showed the message to Michael. "She doesn't even ask specifically about the children," he observed bitterly, "or want to talk to them." "It's an opportunity for us," I replied. "More time to document and prepare the children." We agreed that Michael would respond as if nothing was wrong. "Everything's fine here. Enjoy your conference." That afternoon, Sandra returned for another assessment. This time, the children were notably more open. "Lucas," she asked, "if you could choose who to live with, who would it be?" The teenager, who 2 weeks earlier would have instantly said, "My mother," now hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe with Dad and Grandma." Peter didn't hesitate. "I want to live with Grandma. She makes chocolate fudge and teaches me to play checkers." Julia, always the most reflective, said something that deeply moved me. "I want to live where they tell me the truth." Sandra nodded, taking notes. "And what do you think of Uncle Daniel?" The 3 exchanged glances, a silence loaded with secrets. "He gives expensive presents," Lucas finally said, "but he talks badly about Dad. Says he's a sucker and a loser. And Mom laughs when he talks like that," added Peter sadly. Julia completed, "They think we don't hear when they close the bedroom door, but we do hear." Sandra continued documenting each revelation, building a case that grew stronger every day. Meanwhile, Dr. Mendez worked on the legal aspects. We found more, he informed us during a nighttime meeting. Vanessa isn't in Boston. She's in Miami, at a luxury resort with this Daniel person, all paid for with Michael's credit card. There was more. Apparently, Vanessa had been emptying the children's college savings account, money Michael deposited monthly. Nearly $50,000 had disappeared over the last 2 years. How did she get access? I asked, outraged. Michael gave her power of attorney years ago, explained the lawyer. A common mistake when you blindly trust your spouse. My son looked devastated, but resolute. I'm going to recover that money and protect my children. In the following days, we intensified the plan. I taught the children to cook simple dishes, told stories about our family, and most importantly, to recognize when someone was trying to manipulate them. When a person truly loves you, I explained as we planted flowers in the garden, they never keep you away from other people who also love you. True love unites, it doesn't separate. Peter, always the most receptive, absorbed everything like a sponge. Julia questioned, analyzed, and slowly formed her own conclusions. Lucas, the most resistant, was beginning to show signs of change, especially after Michael began dedicating real time to him. On the 14th day, the eve of Vanessa's supposed return, which we now knew would be delayed, we did something special. A picnic in the garden with all the children's favorite dishes that I had learned to prepare over the past days. For when you miss me, I explained, as I served my chocolate cake that Peter loved so much. We will miss you, said Julia, surprising everyone with her honesty. I never thought it would be fun to stay at Grandma's house. Lucas, still trying to maintain his indifferent teenage pose, mumbled, It's actually pretty cool here. Peter, always the most expressive, solemnly declared, I want to live here forever. Michael, who now spent every night with us, exchanged a significant look with me. About that, we need to talk to you. With carefully chosen words for their ages, Michael explained to the children that he and their mother were having problems, that she hadn't been honest about many things, and that changes would likely come when she returned. What kind of changes? Asked Lucas, suddenly alert. Mom and I might separate, Michael responded honestly. And if that happens, I'll fight for you to stay with me. Away from Mom? Peter's eyes filled with tears. Not necessarily away, but living primarily with me and visiting her. Julia, always surprising with her perception, asked, Is it because of Uncle Daniel? Michael took a deep breath. Partially, but it's mainly because your mother hasn't been honest, has made decisions that harm our family, and because you deserve a stable and truthful home. It was a difficult conversation, full of tears and questions, but necessary. The children needed to be prepared for what was coming. That night, as I helped Peter brush his teeth, he asked me a question that broke my heart. Grandma, does Mom like me? I sat down on the bathroom stool, placing him on my lap. Why do you ask that, my love? Because once I heard her tell Uncle Daniel that I was an accident. I took a deep breath, fighting against the anger I felt toward Vanessa. Peter, look at me. You are not an accident. You are a gift. And if your mother can't see that, the problem is hers, not yours. Then why did she have me? That was too difficult a question for a 7-year-old, but Peter deserved some kind of answer. Sometimes people have children for the wrong reasons, but that doesn't diminish how special you are. You are loved by your father, by me, by your siblings, and that's what matters. He hugged me tightly, and at that moment, I promised myself I would do everything in my power to protect these children from their own mother's toxicity. The next morning, we received a call that changed everything. It was Vanessa, clearly irritated. What's going on there? Michael isn't answering my calls, and now he's sleeping at your house? Michael took the phone. I'm here, Vanessa. We need to talk when you get back. About what? Her voice was defensive. About many things. The credit cards you took out in my name to start, or the children's savings account money that disappeared. A tense silence followed by an explosion of anger. Who do you think you are to investigate me? I bet it was your meddling mother who put these ideas in your head. Come home, Vanessa. We have a lot to discuss. Don't tell me what to do, she screamed. Are those brats listening? Because if they are, they better prepare themselves. When I get back, I'm taking all 3 to my mother's house, and you'll never see them again. Michael kept his calm, something he never would have managed 2 weeks ago. I think you're forgetting who pays the bills. Come back tomorrow, as agreed. I'll be waiting with a lawyer. A lawyer? She sounded panicked. You can't do this to me. I can and I will. See you tomorrow, Vanessa. He hung up, cutting her off in the middle of another explosion of rage. The children, who had heard everything from the stairs, looked shocked. Is Mom going to take us away? Asked Peter, gripping my hand tightly. No, Michael was firm. I promise you she won't. I spent the rest of the day preparing the children for the confrontation that would come. I explained that their mother would probably be very angry, that she might say things to scare them or make them feel guilty, but that they needed to remember the truth they had discovered in the last 15 days. You are loved, I repeated to each one. You are strong, and together we will get through this. On the morning of the 16th day, as we were having breakfast, we heard a car brake sharply in front of the house. Vanessa had returned, and by the sound of the slamming door, was not in a good mood. Michael stood up. Children, go to Grandma's room. We'll call you when it's safe. To my surprise, they obeyed without questioning. Even Lucas. An unthinkable change 2 weeks ago. Vanessa entered without knocking, as usual. She was tanned, wearing new clothes, with a furious expression. What's this story about a lawyer? She fired as soon as she saw Michael. Then her eyes fell on me. And I knew you had something to do with all this. Sit down, Vanessa, said Michael with a calmness I had never seen in him. We have a lot to discuss. Don't tell me what to do in your mother's house, she shouted. Where are my children? They won't come down while you're shouting, I informed her calmly. This is a safe environment for them, and we want to keep it that way. Safe environment? She laughed bitterly. Look who's talking, the woman who abandoned her son at school to give private lessons, always prioritized other people's children over her own. It won't work this time, Vanessa, interrupted Michael. No more manipulation. I know everything. About Daniel, about the credit cards, about the children's savings money, about your work trips. Her face paled, but she quickly recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. You're delusional. I have proof of everything. Michael continued, placing a folder on the table. Bank statements, emails, photos, even the children's testimony about Uncle Daniel, who sleeps in our room when I'm traveling. Vanessa froze for a moment, then tried to change tactics. Michael, darling, you're confused. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I want a divorce and custody of the children. Custody? She let out a hysterical laugh. You barely see your children. You work all day. How are you going to take care of them? With my mother's help, for starters. And I've already talked to my boss. I'm reducing my hours. The children are my priority now. You can't take my children from me, she screamed, the mask of calm completely gone. You yourself abandoned them here for 2 weeks to go to Miami with your lover. You didn't even call to see how they were, just sent a message to say you'd be staying away longer. Miami? She tried to feign confusion. What are you talking about? I was at the conference in Boston. Michael showed photos from Facebook that Daniel had posted, tagging the location in Miami, with Vanessa clearly visible in the background. Realizing she was cornered, Vanessa changed tactics again, this time to threats. If you try to take my children, I'll tell the judge you're violent, that you hit the children, that you're negligent. Who do you think they'll believe? Me, the devoted mother, or you, the absent father? We have everything recorded, I said calmly, pointing to the discreet equipment scattered around the room, including this conversation, including your threat to falsely accuse my son of abuse. Vanessa's face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. You! She pointed her finger at me, trembling with rage. You planned all this. You never accepted that I was your little boy's wife. You always wanted to separate us. No, Vanessa, I replied calmly. I just wanted my son and my grandchildren to be happy. You chose the path of lies and manipulation. These are the consequences. Before she could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs. The children had come down, attracted by the shouting. Mom! Peter's voice trembled slightly. Vanessa immediately changed her expression, opening a forced smile. My loves, come give Mommy a hug. I've missed you so much. To my surprise, the children didn't run to her. They stood on the stairs, watching. It didn't seem like it on the phone yesterday, said Lucas with impressive coolness for his 13 years. What? No, darling, you must have misunderstood. "We heard you," affirmed Julia. "You called us brats. You said you were going to take us away to Grandma Marta, and Daddy would never see us again, and you called us brats," repeated Peter, hurt. Vanessa shot a furious look at me. "See what you've done? Poisoned my own children against me." "Don't blame others for your own words, Vanessa," said Michael. "The children simply heard the truth." "Come here now," ordered Vanessa, her voice becoming more strident. "We're going home right away." None of the children moved. "We're fine here," said Lucas, "with Dad and Grandma." Julia completed, "Grandma makes cookies and tells stories and doesn't yell at us." It was at that moment that Vanessa completely lost control. She advanced toward me, her face contorted with fury. "You destroyed my family. I'll end you, you meddling old woman." Michael positioned himself between us, blocking her. "Enough, Vanessa. Leave my mother's house now, or I'll call the police." "Your threats don't scare me," she shouted, but took a step back. "It's not a threat," Michael replied, picking up the phone. "It's a promise." Vanessa looked around, seeing herself surrounded. Michael determined, me calm, the children united against her. The entire lie she had constructed was crumbling before her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret messing with me." She left, slamming the door so hard that the photo frame on the wall fell and broke. As soon as she departed, the children ran to their father, who hugged them tightly. "Everything will be okay," he promised with tears in his eyes. "We'll stay together, I promise." Peter extended his hand to me, pulling me into the group hug. And there, in the middle of my modest living room, among the shards of the broken photo frame, we found something that had been lost for a long time, a real family. The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster. Vanessa, as we expected, didn't give up easily. Shortly after leaving my house, she emptied the joint accounts she had with Michael before he could block them. She took approximately $8,000, the little that remained after her previous extravagances. Next, when Michael went to get some clothes and belongings for the children at home, he discovered that Vanessa had changed the locks. When confronted, she simply said, "It's my house too. You can't stop me from protecting what's mine." Michael, following Dr. Mendez's advice, didn't react to the provocations. Instead, he documented everything and strictly followed the legal protocol. He filed for divorce, requested temporary custody of the children, and a precautionary measure to freeze the couple's assets. The children, meanwhile, remained with me. Despite the natural confusion and sadness, they were adapting surprisingly well. We established a routine that provided stability: school during the day, chores and games in the afternoon, family dinner at night. Lucas, who had previously been the most resistant, was now the most protective of his siblings. He assumed the role of man of the house when Michael was at work, helping me with tasks that required strength or height. Julia discovered the pleasure of reading, something Vanessa had always discouraged as a waste of time, and devoured the children's books I had kept from Michael's time. Peter, always the most adaptable, seemed to flourish with the stability and attention he received. A week after the confrontation, we received the first legal summons. Vanessa had presented her own version of the facts, claiming that Michael was emotionally abusive, that I had manipulated the children against her, and that she was a dedicated mother whose only fault was trying to build a career while caring for 3 children. "How can she lie with such conviction?" Michael asked, incredulous after reading the document. "Years of practice," I replied. "But don't worry, we have evidence. She only has words." Our first hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks of anguish, preparation, and attempts to keep the children protected from the worst of the battle. During this period, Vanessa tried various tactics. She showed up at the children's school, causing such a scene that the principal had to call security. She started calling the children late at night, crying and saying she was suffering because of their evil father and manipulative grandmother. The worst attempt came in the 3rd week when we discovered she had created fake profiles on social media to spread rumors about Michael and me. Anonymous posts insinuating that I had been fired from school for incompetence, a blatant lie. I had retired with honors, that Michael had alcohol problems, he barely drank a beer on weekends, and that the children were begging to return to their mother. Fortunately, our lawyer was prepared. We presented screenshots showing that the profiles had been created recently. all with the same writing pattern characteristic of Vanessa, and all accessed from the same IP address. The day of the hearing finally arrived. Michael hired a trusted babysitter to stay with the children, sparing them the trauma of seeing their parents in litigation. I insisted on accompanying my son, despite Vanessa's attempts to exclude me from the process. The family court was packed that day, couples in different stages of separation, confused children, hurried lawyers. Amid this sad choreography, I saw Vanessa for the first time since the confrontation at my house. She had calculated every detail of her presentation. She dressed with studied simplicity, nothing like the expensive and extravagant outfits she usually wore. Her face was free of the heavy makeup she preferred, replaced by a natural look that screamed, "Devoted mother." She carried a folder full of papers, probably to give the impression of organization and seriousness. When she saw us, she feigned surprise and then hurt, as if our presence was an unexpected blow. I could almost admire her acting ability if it wasn't being used to try to destroy my son and grandchildren. The hearing began, and Vanessa presented her version first. With controlled tears and a voice trembling just the right amount, she described herself as a self-sacrificing mother who did everything for her children. She painted Michael as an absent workaholic who suddenly decided to steal her children after being poisoned by me, the resentful mother-in-law who never accepted her. "I just want my children back," she concluded, with a solitary tear perfectly rolling down her cheek. "They need their mother." Then it was our turn. Dr. Mendez methodically presented our evidence, the statements from the fraudulent credit cards, proof of withdrawals from the children's savings, the photos from Miami with Daniel, the recordings of Vanessa threatening to falsely accuse Michael of abuse, and most impactfully, the recorded testimonies of the children themselves. The judge's expression visibly changed with each new piece of evidence. When the video of Lucas describing how his mother spoke ill of his father with Uncle Daniel was shown, Vanessa lost her composure. "That's a montage," she shouted, standing up. "They manipulated my children. It's illegal to record children without consent." The judge, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes that seemed to have seen all kinds of lies in her career, called for silence. "Ms. Vanessa, control yourself, or you'll be removed from the court," she warned. Then, addressing our lawyer, she asked, "Were these recordings obtained legally?" "Yes, Your Honor. They were made in Mrs. Judith's residence, with the knowledge and consent of the children's father, who holds equal parental authority." The judge nodded, and the hearing continued. The final blow came when we presented the audio of Vanessa discussing with Daniel her plans to empty the accounts and disappear with the children. "After we get what we need, we take the brats and disappear. He'll never find us," her voice clearly said on the recorder. "That idiot works so much he won't even have time to look properly." The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa seemed to have shrunk in her chair. Her facade of dedicated mother completely crumbled. After hearing the final arguments, the judge didn't need much time to decide. She granted temporary custody to Michael, with supervised visitation rights for Vanessa, and issued a restraining order, preventing her from going to my house or the children's school without prior appointment. "This court takes very seriously attempts at parental alienation and financial fraud," declared the judge. "A more thorough investigation will be conducted before the final decision on custody." We left the court exhausted but relieved. Michael cried for the first time since everything had started. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered as he hugged me. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You're stronger than you think," I replied. "You always have been." When we arrived home, the children were anxiously waiting for us. We explained the outcome of the hearing to them in the gentlest way possible. "So we're going to live with Dad?" asked Peter, trying to understand. "Yes, for now, you'll officially live with Dad here at Grandma's house until we find a new place." "And Mom?" asked Julia, her expression difficult to read. "You'll be able to see your mother," explained Michael. "But for the first few times, there will be someone from the court present to ensure everything goes well." "I don't want to see her," declared Lucas, crossing his arms. "She lied to us our whole lives." Michael knelt in front of his son. "Lucas, I understand how you feel, but she's still your mother. Maybe one day she'll realize her mistakes and change. We need to give her that chance." Lucas didn't look convinced, but nodded reluctantly. The following weeks were of adaptation. Michael managed to negotiate a more flexible schedule at work, allowing him to be present in the children's school life. We found a house to rent a few blocks from mine, allowing me to continue being present in their daily lives. The first supervised visit with Vanessa was tense. She showed up loaded with expensive gifts, her usual tactic for buying affection. The children, especially Lucas and Julia, remained distant. Peter, always the most emotional, oscillated between wanting his mother's comfort and remembering the lies he had discovered. "She tried to hug me like nothing happened," Lucas reported afterward, "like she hadn't abandoned us for weeks to be with that Daniel guy." The visits continued to be difficult, with Vanessa alternating between trying to buy the children with gifts and portraying herself as a victim. On one particularly disturbing occasion, she tried to convince Peter to tell the truth about how Dad and Grandma are mean, resulting in the temporary suspension of visits until a new psychological evaluation. Meanwhile, our new family routine began to solidify. Michael discovered domestic talents he never knew he had. He cooked surprisingly well and had infinite patience for helping with homework. I offered my experience as a teacher, helping the children catch up on the academic lag they had accumulated during the years of neglect. 2 months after the initial hearing, a surprising discovery completely turned the case. Daniel, Vanessa's lover, contacted our lawyer. Apparently, Vanessa had tried to convince him to lie in court, stating they had never had an affair and that Michael was inventing stories out of jealousy. "I can't do that," he said during the meeting where he revealed everything. "I'm tired of the lies. She manipulated me as much as she manipulated you." He provided text messages, emails, and even his own recordings that documented not only the 4-year affair, but also Vanessa's plans to suck as much money as possible out of Michael before leaving him. "She said she hated him," revealed Daniel, looking genuinely disturbed, "that she was only with him for the money and status, that as soon as she got enough, she would divorce him and get the house, alimony, and custody of the children, which she planned to use as a weapon against him." When asked why he decided to reveal all this now, Daniel admitted, "She started doing the same to me. I discovered debts in my name, lies about her family, her past. She's dangerous, and those children don't deserve to grow up with someone like that." With this new set of evidence, the final court decision was even more decisive. Michael received full custody of the children with supervised visits for Vanessa, reduced to once a month. Additionally, she was ordered to reimburse all the diverted money and participate in mandatory therapy for personality disorder. The most surprising thing wasn't the court decision, but Vanessa's reaction to it. Instead of fighting as we expected, she simply disappeared, abandoned the apartment, left her job, which we discovered was only part-time, not the promising career she always boasted about, and stopped answering calls. "Did she just give up on her own children?" asked Julia one night when she realized her mother had missed the 3rd consecutive supervised visit. "I think your mother is facing her own demons now," I replied carefully. "Sometimes people like her don't know how to deal with the truth when it finally comes to light. Do you think she'll ever come back?" Peter's voice was small and uncertain. Michael hugged his son. "I don't know, son, but know that with or without her, you have a family that loves you unconditionally." 6 months had passed since the initial confrontation in my living room. My grandchildren, once rebellious and suspicious children, had transformed. Lucas, now 14, had become a responsible teenager, protective of his siblings and dedicated to his studies, talents that had always been there, just suffocated by the previous toxic dynamic. Julia, at 11, revealed herself to be a talented artist and a voracious reader. Peter, with his newly turned 8 years, exhibited a joy and spontaneity we rarely saw before. Michael, my son, who for so long lived as a shadow in his own life, finally found his voice and his strength. He earned a promotion at work, ironically earning more while working fewer hours, and was proving to be the father I always knew he could be. As for me, the retired teacher who did nothing, I had never been so busy or fulfilled. I started giving private lessons to children with learning difficulties 3 times a week, leaving plenty of time for my grandchildren. On Saturdays, I organized a reading club for Julia and her new friends. On Sundays, I taught Peter to play chess, revealing him to be a natural strategist. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, as we watched the children playing in the garden of our new family home, a modest but cozy 3-bedroom house that Michael had managed to buy thanks to his promotion. My son turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Mom, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Vanessa hadn't called you that day, demanding you take care of the children." I observed my grandchildren laughing and running across the lawn, free from the weight of lies and manipulation they had carried for so long. "I believe truth always finds a way, son. Sooner or later, masks fall." "Even so," he smiled, squeezing my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on us." I looked at that family reborn from the ashes of a toxic marriage. The children who could finally be children, the son who found his strength, the grandmother who refused to be just a convenient babysitter, and in doing so, saved everyone. "Never," I promised, returning the squeeze. "I would never give up. It would be wonderful to say our story ended there, with all of us living happily ever after, but life is rarely that simple or definitive. The truth is that the months that followed brought new challenges, surprising revelations, and eventually an unexpected form of resolution. Approximately 8 months after Vanessa's disappearance, when we were beginning to get used to the idea that she might never return, we received a call that would change everything again. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. Michael was at work, the children at school, and I was enjoying a few quiet hours to prepare for the private lessons I would give the next day. The phone rang, and when I answered, I didn't immediately recognize the voice on the other end. "Mrs. Donovan." The female voice sounded hesitant, almost unrecognizable. "Yes, who's calling?" A long sigh. "It's Vanessa." My heart raced. We hadn't heard from her in 8 months. No visits, no calls, no messages to the children on birthdays or holidays. It was as if she had been swallowed by the earth. "Vanessa." I tried to keep my voice neutral, professional. "What can I do for you?" I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I need to speak with Michael. It's important." Something in her tone made me hesitate before hanging up. It wasn't the usual manipulative tone, nor the fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. She sounded broken. "Michael is working now. I can tell him to call you later. Please." Her voice trembled slightly. "It's really important. I'm at St. Luke's Hospital, room 342. Hospital. That wasn't part of her usual repertoire of manipulations. "Are you sick?" Another long silence. "Yes. It's not contagious or anything that could affect the children, but I don't know how much time I have left, and I need to talk to him. To all of you, actually." After promising to pass on the message, I hung up thoughtfully. My protective instinct screamed that it could be another trap, an elaborate scheme to regain the children's sympathy or manipulate Michael. But something in her voice. When Michael returned from work, I reported the call with complete honesty. "Hospital?" He seemed genuinely surprised. "Do you think it's true?" "I don't know, but it's easy to check. St. Luke's is nearby." Michael remained silent, clearly torn. In the last 8 months, he had finally begun to heal, rebuild his confidence, be the father he always wanted to be. "What if it's just another trick? What if it's not?" I replied softly. "Michael, you don't need to allow her back into your lives, but if something really is wrong, you'll regret not at least checking." That night, after putting the children to bed, Michael went to the hospital. He returned 2 hours later, pale-faced and red-eyed. "It's true," he said as soon as he entered, collapsing on the sofa. "She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Terminal." I sat down beside him, absorbing the news. "How long?" "Weeks, maybe a few months. She found out 6 months ago but didn't want to say anything. She was ashamed, said she didn't deserve our sympathy after everything she did." This didn't sound like the Vanessa we knew, the woman who never admitted fault, who always found someone to blame. "She seems different, very different." Michael ran his hands over his face. "Almost unrecognizable physically, too. She's lost so much weight, lost her hair from chemotherapy. But it's more than that. It's like the mask has fallen. Or maybe the disease has brought some clarity. I don't know. What does she want? To apologize, to me, to you, to the children. Says she doesn't expect us to accept, but she needs to try before the end. Do you believe her?" Michael sighed deeply. "Yes. It's the first time I feel like I'm talking to the real person, not a facade. Maybe it takes facing your own mortality to finally be honest." We stayed up late, discussing how to proceed. The children had the right to know their mother was dying, but we also needed to protect them from more trauma. Michael decided he would talk to each one individually, testing their reactions before suggesting a visit. Lucas, as expected, was the most resistant. Why should we care? She didn't care about us. Julia remained silent, processing the information with the maturity beyond her years she always demonstrated. Is she really going to die? Peter, only 8 years old, was the one who concerned us most. Mom is sick like Grandpa was before he went to heaven. His innocent understanding of the situation broke my heart. In the end, we decided the choice would be theirs. Lucas initially refused to visit, but after a week of reflection changed his mind. "I'll go just to show I'm better than her," he declared, though I suspected there were more feelings involved than he admitted. The first visit was tense and emotionally exhausting. Vanessa truly was unrecognizable. The woman who was once vain and exuberant was now a fragile shadow in the hospital bed. Still, her eyes lit up when she saw the children. The conversations were awkward at first. What do you say to someone who has hurt you so deeply but is now dying? Vanessa, to my surprise, didn't try to justify herself. There was no emotional manipulation, no deathbed blackmail. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said in a weak voice. "I just want you to know that I understand how wrong I was and that despite all my failures, I never stopped loving you, even if I didn't know how to show it properly." For the children, it was confusing. The mother who had abandoned them was now asking for forgiveness. The woman who had lied for years now offered raw truth. In the weeks that followed, we established a routine. We visited Vanessa 3 times a week. Initially, the visits were brief and formal, but gradually something unexpected began to happen. Bonds we thought were permanently broken began to hesitantly reconnect. Vanessa, free from the weight of maintaining her lies and manipulations, seemed finally able to be truly present with her children. She listened with genuine interest about Lucas's school, Julia's drawings, Peter's imaginative stories. There were no more attempts to buy affection with gifts or empty promises, just the precious time she had left. One afternoon, while the children had gone to buy snacks in the hospital cafeteria, Vanessa asked me to stay. "Judith," she began, her voice now constantly hoarse from the disease. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear anything from. We're beyond that now, don't you think?" I replied, adjusting her pillow for greater comfort, an automatic gesture of care that surprised me. "Maybe you are. I'm still learning to set aside my pride." She paused, visibly gathering courage. "I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. Thank you for never giving up on them, for seeing through me when no one else did." I sat down, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "They always deserved better than me," she continued. "I always knew that, deep down. Maybe that's why I tried so hard to keep you away. You were the mirror that showed everything I wasn't. Patient, selfless, truly strong." "Vanessa, no. Please let me finish while I still have the strength," she breathed with difficulty. "I spent years building a fortress of lies because I was empty inside, without purpose, without values, just existing and consuming, using people. When I look back now, I barely recognize that woman." "The disease changed your perspective," I observed gently. "The disease only accelerated the inevitable. I think I started to change that day in your living room, when I saw I had lost everything, when I realized my own children preferred to stay with you rather than return with me." She extended a trembling hand, which, after a moment of hesitation, I took. "You saved my children from me, Judith, and now you're here, showing kindness to someone who only caused you pain. That is real strength." That conversation changed something between us. It didn't erase the past or completely eradicate my mistrust, but it opened a small space for something I never imagined would be possible: understanding. In the following weeks, as Vanessa's condition worsened, we all witnessed her struggle not just against the disease, but against her own demons. In her most lucid moments, she asked to record messages for each child, for future birthdays, graduations, weddings, milestones she wouldn't live to see. "Not as a substitute," she explained when I asked about it, "just as a reminder that in the end, I got at least one thing right: loving them as they deserve." Michael, who initially maintained emotional distance during the visits, gradually allowed himself to lower his guard. One night, after visiting her alone, he returned with red eyes. "We talked," he explained, "about everything, without filters, without games. For the first time in our relationship, we had a completely honest conversation. How do you feel? Sad, relieved, furious that this only happened now, when it's too late to fix things. And yet, grateful that at least there's this closure." In early December, Vanessa's condition deteriorated drastically. The doctors warned it was a matter of days. At her request, we transferred the visits to our home with hospice care. She wanted to spend her last moments in a familiar environment, not in a sterile hospital room. We set up a room for her in the living room, where she could see the garden and hear the children playing. Lucas, overcoming his initial resistance, read to her every afternoon. Julia brought her drawings, creating a colorful collection on the wall near the bed. Peter, still too young to fully understand, simply lay beside her, telling made-up stories about superheroes and princesses. On a particularly cold morning, Vanessa called me to her side while the children were at school. "Judith," she whispered, her voice now almost inaudible, "promise me something." "What?" "Tell them the truth, all of it, when they're older and ask about me. Don't turn me into a saint I never was, or into the monster I sometimes was. Just the truth." "I promise," I replied, holding her skeletal hand. "And one more thing," she continued, each word clearly costing her an enormous effort. "Thank you for giving me this last lesson, the most important of all." "What lesson?" A faint smile touched her lips. "That it's never too late for truth, and that true love isn't about control or possession. It's about wanting the best for the other, even when it hurts." 2 days later, Vanessa passed away peacefully during the night, with Michael holding one hand and me the other. The children had said their goodbyes the night before, each in their own way. Lucas with a formal handshake that turned into a sudden hug, Julia with a final drawing, Peter with a kiss on the cheek, and the promise to be a good boy. The funeral was simple and intimate, just our small family and a few friends Vanessa had made during her illness, nurses, other patients, a spiritual counselor who visited her regularly. There was nothing of the ostentation or artificiality that she had valued so much in her previous life. During the service, Michael gave a brief speech that perfectly captured what we all felt. "Vanessa lived 2 lives," he said, "the first full of lies, manipulation, and inner emptiness. The second, although brief, marked by honesty, repentance, and finally, peace. We are not here to celebrate the first life, but to honor the second, to recognize that people can change, even when it seems too late." The months that followed were of adjustment and healing. The children processed grief in different ways, Lucas with a quiet maturity, Julia through art, Peter with occasional questions about where exactly heaven is and if mommy can see him playing soccer. One afternoon, almost 6 months after the funeral, I found Lucas in the garden, looking thoughtfully at the sky. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, sitting beside him. "About how strange things are," he replied. "I spent so much time hating Mom, and now I miss her. Not the person she was before, but the one she became at the end. Life is rarely as simple as we would like," I commented. "Grandma." He turned to me, his eyes revealing a depth that reminded me so much of his father at the same age. "That day when Mom called you wanting to leave us here, did you know what you were doing? I mean, did you have a plan from the beginning?" I reflected for a moment before answering. "Not exactly a plan, but I knew it was an opportunity to show the truth to you, to your father, maybe even to your mother. Truth has a power of its own, once exposed to light." He nodded slowly. "Thank you for not giving up, even when we were terrible to you. That's what real families do, Lucas. They don't give up on each other, even in difficult moments." That night, as I watched Michael helping Peter with homework, Julia quietly drawing in the corner, and Lucas reading in the armchair, I felt a deep sense of peace. Our journey had been painful, full of difficult revelations and losses, but also of redemption and second chances. The retired teacher, who did nothing, had, in the end, taught her most valuable lesson, that truth, however painful it may initially be, is the only foundation upon which a genuine family can be built. And that, I realized, was the real victory against all the lies and manipulations. Not the destruction of Vanessa, but the reconstruction of what she had tried to shatter. Our family, stronger, more honest, and more loving than ever. The first anniversary of Vanessa's death came faster than we expected. We decided to mark the date not with sadness, but with a small planting ceremony in the garden. A cherry tree that would bloom in spring, symbolizing renewal and continuity. "I think she would like this," commented Michael as the children took turns throwing earth around the small tree. "Something beautiful arising from all this." "I agree," I replied, observing how each of the grandchildren handled the moment in their own way. Lucas solemnly methodical, Julia artistic in the way she arranged flowers around it, Peter enthusiastic about the idea that the tree would grow alongside him. Much had changed in the year that had passed. Michael was promoted to supervisor at the engineering firm, which meant better hours and more time with the children. We discovered he had a talent for photography, a hobby that began almost by accident when he won an old camera at a charity bazaar, and that was now turning into a possible parallel career. Lucas, now 15, had transformed from a rebellious teenager into a dedicated student with ambitions to study engineering. "Like Dad wanted to do," he explained, causing tears in Michael's eyes. Julia, at 12, revealed herself to be not just a talented artist, but also a promising writer. Her stories and poems often spoke of families, truths, and transformations, processing her experiences through art. Peter, now 9, continued to be the family's ray of sunshine. His inexhaustible energy and infinite curiosity constantly reminded us to find joy in simple things. As for me, the retired life had never been so busy or rewarding. My private lessons had expanded into a small educational center for children with learning difficulties. 3 days a week, I worked there, helping children whom many had given up on, just as they had almost given up on my grandchildren. The other days were dedicated to my family and to finally enjoying the peaceful moments of reading and reflection I had dreamed of during my working years. Last week, something happened that I consider the perfect closure to our story. Lucas came to me with a school assignment. They had to write an essay about someone who had positively influenced their life. "I wrote about you, Grandma," he said, handing me the paper. "I hope that's okay." I read the title with tears in my eyes. The teacher's final lesson, how my grandmother taught me that love is stronger than lies. Later, as we sat on the porch watching the cherry tree, which had grown surprisingly fast and was already showing its first buds, Michael asked me a question that had probably been on his mind for a long time. "Mom, do you think you could ever forgive Vanessa? Not for her sake, since she's gone, but for yours?" I watched a cherry blossom petal fall gently into my palm. "I think I already have, not because she deserved it, but because holding on to that anger would only hurt us, and we've all been hurt enough." Michael nodded, understanding. "You know what I learned from all this? That sometimes the people who seem strongest, like Vanessa with all her confidence and manipulation, are actually the weakest, and those who seem ordinary, like a retired literature teacher, can have extraordinary strength when it matters." I smiled, watching the children play a board game through the window. "We all have that strength, Michael. Some of us just take longer to find it." That evening, as I helped Julia with her English assignment, she looked up at me with her thoughtful eyes. "Grandma, do you think people can really change? Like Mom did at the end?" I considered her question carefully. "I believe people can change when they face the truth about themselves. The hardest part isn't changing. It's being honest enough to see the need for change. I hope I'll be like you when I grow up," she said suddenly. "Not afraid of the truth, even when it's difficult." I hugged her close, my heart full. "Just be yourself, Julia. That's more than enough." Later that night, alone in my room, I took out the letter Vanessa had written to me before she died, the one her mother had found among her things and delivered to me after the funeral. I had read it many times in the past year, but tonight it held a new significance. I unfolded it carefully and read the last paragraph once more. "If there's one thing I hope my children learn from all this, it's that the truth, however painful, is always better than the most comfortable lie. And that love, real love like yours, Judith, doesn't control or manipulate. It sets free and nurtures. I was too late to learn this lesson, but maybe through you, they will learn it in time. I placed the letter back in my drawer and went to the window. Outside, the cherry tree stood in the moonlight, its new buds promising beauty in the coming spring. Like that tree, our family had been planted in difficult ground, watered with tears, but was now growing toward the light. The retired teacher who did nothing had, in the end, done everything that mattered, preserved the truth, protected the innocent, and proved that love, authentic and unburdened by manipulation, is the most powerful force of all. And as I watched over my sleeping family that night, I knew with absolute certainty that the best lessons aren't always taught in classrooms. Sometimes they're taught in living rooms, around dinner tables, and in gardens where cherry trees grow from the ashes of our deepest pains. If you've made it this far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It's just 2 clicks for you, but it means the world to me. Let me know what you thought about this story in the comments below. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me until the end, and I'll see you in the next one.